Hello everyone, hopefully you can hear us and see us and my microphone isn't too loud. Oh, I'm definitely using the wrong mic on XSplit, 1 second. You just think that... Oh, hang on a minute. Yeah, okay. There we go, that should be fixed now. Hello, does that sound better? Does that sound any better? Oh God. Use that. Okay, does that sound better? Okay, I fixed it. Good. All right. Hello, everyone. Hopefully you can hear us and see us. We shall be starting momentarily. Once I figure out how to zoom into my camera again. There we go. Turn the brightness up a bit.
Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3.
Oh, I should do the same thing. Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2. Okay, good. All right, I'm ready to start when you are.
Yeah, just give me 1 second.
Remember to do a clap sync.
That should be fine. I am now recording.
I am now recording.
3 2 1. Clap. Welcome to the Windows. Zach, I didn't hear you clap or anything.
I clapped. It's fine. I got it on my audio, so just fine.
All right. Welcome to the Windows Central Podcast, episode 346 for June 6, 2024. Hey everyone, Gina Rubino here, joined with Zach Bowden for another exciting episode of the Windows Central Podcast this week. Well, we got a lot to talk about. Of course, the big stuff in the news is Windows recall under major fire. I feel like we should have some sort of cryon and like battle graphics showing when we say that. But yeah, we'll go over sort of the controversy around Windows recall and why Microsoft's PR was unfortunately woefully unprepared, but they should have been, for the criticisms going around recall. We'll also talk about Computex. I was there in Taipei last week, which is why I probably don't sound very good, both in terms of energy and quality of my voice. But we'll go over some of the big news there. Qualcomm, of course, gave a big keynote, as did Intel and AMD. We'll talk about all the infighting and backstabbing and gossip and all the stuff that happened there, as well as the new stuff that was announced. And if we have time, we'll do thing of the week as well. Zach, how you doing on this fine Thursday?
I am tired.
Don't even start. Don't even start. I don't want to hear that.
I forgot you were on a 17-hour flight, is it? Something like that?
Something like that. It was, yeah, unfortunately, the way this stuff works with flights, I had to get up at like 6 a.m. because it was Tuesday, and I had meetings, and it was an executive briefing where the Qualcomm's people were answering questions from the press, which was kind of fun. And then I went to Computex, which is like CES, so you're on a floor and walking around, and booths are everywhere. So I had to do that all day. Then I had a reception in the evening to go to, and then I had to go back to my hotel room, pack, and catch an 11:30 p.m. flight to go back to the United States, which, yeah, is like around 17 hours in total time. But when you count the 3 hours of connections and all that, it's a lot longer. So I ended up being up for like 36 hours because I don't sleep well on planes. I know I was going to why don't you just sleep on the plane? That doesn't work for me. I don't know why. It doesn't. And so I came home, walked the dogs, and then finally tried to get some sleep, and it's been a battle since. But that's not why we're here. We're here to talk about why I was there and what's been going on. Of course, you were in Seattle just a couple of weeks ago when they had their big AI event, and they did announce those Qualcomm processors and all those new laptops. But it was really the AI features that are coming to Windows 11 very soon that drove a lot of the clicks, we should say. One of those being recall. I wish there was controversy around the was it co-creator?
Yeah. Yeah.
feature, which is like, for those who don't know, I think it's in Microsoft. It's in Photos or Paint. I forgot which one it is, or is it just a standalone app? I forgot.
It's
It's like
co-creators
co-creator.
in Paint, yeah. So that's the one
Okay,
where you're drawing and it draws with you.
yeah, it draws with you with AI, which I'm really actually excited about. But fine, let's talk about Recall. Recall, the feature that screen caps your screen every 5 seconds,
Hmm.
assuming you're on doing something different, and then stores it away and uses AI to look over your content so you can easily search uh, back into it. Now, before we get started with this, we should point out that it's kind of funny that Mac OS actually has this feature. It's a third-party application. I forgot what's the name of that app. Do you remember, Sam?
Rewind AI, I think it was called
Rewind AI.
Rewind.ai. Yeah.
Yeah, which totally makes sense, right? So it's the same thing. So Microsoft wasn't even first to this. Of course, you don't hear any controversy over Rewind, even though it seems to be pretty popular. Um, but there is this tension between people wanting AI to not be a gimmick, not to be a fad. When's it actually going to do something cool? And also, you can't have any of my information, and I need to be secure. And so Microsoft is trying to walk that line. Um, it could have done a much better job of that. Let's just leave it at there. So why don't you explain to us the controversy and the blowback, what's going on there, and we can share our thoughts.
Yeah, so there was originally a bit of blowback from day one. If you remember when we were talking about this last time, people were concerned that Microsoft was essentially lying about the claims they made in regards to what Microsoft itself does with the data. So when Recall was announced on stage, Microsoft claimed that the data is processed on device and is not uploaded to the cloud. Microsoft cannot see the data that Recall collects, and therefore it cannot train any AI models. The data is yours. It stays on your device. It doesn't get synced to other devices. It doesn't connect to your Microsoft account. It doesn't get synced to a server. It is on your device. And lots of people went, I don't believe you. Just don't believe you. That's ridiculous. You're Microsoft. There must be a catch. You're likely going to sell this or do something with the data that we don't like. Microsoft insists that that's not the case. But this week, the PR nightmare became real in a sense that it just snowballed into something much bigger than it was originally. When the recall was originally announced, it was branded as creepy, and a lot of people were a little bit concerned. But ultimately, it wasn't too much of a big deal. Last week we were defending it, and to be fair, I'm still sort of defending the feature. But there is one aspect of it that has been discovered, which is arguably indefensible, and that is the way Recall stores that data locally isn't very safe. At least that's how it seems based on the bits we have currently. Remember, Windows Recall and Copilot PCs aren't out yet. They don't ship until June 18. That's 2 weeks from now. There is time for Microsoft to make more changes to Windows Recall. One of them maybe enhancing the security around this. So specifically what happened this week is a number of security researchers, or a couple of them at least, discovered that Windows Recall stores its data essentially unencrypted. It sits in a protected directory in the system files on Windows, which is it is protected, but it's easily bypassed. Anything can sort of get in there just by clicking a few buttons, essentially. And once you're in there, you can read everything Windows Recall has collected in essentially plain text. It's stored in an SQLite database, and the screenshots that it captures are also basically just there for you to look at. You can change the file type on them, and you will be able to just view them in raw, essentially. That's not great for a number of reasons. The first one being, if any potential malware is built to harness that data, go in and scrape that data from that directory, everything you've ever done on your computer is suddenly in the hands of a malware attacker. So yeah, that's not great. There's also concerns around, employers perhaps jumping in there, building their own tools and scraping that data to spy on its employees and stuff. And so there's a lot of discourse and a lot of unhappy people about how Recall is storing this data. And to be fair, it's not a good look. This is coming from this is a tool that's coming from a company that only recently insisted that doing security is of its utmost importance. And when a feature like Recall shows up, which is a privacy focused thing, right? It's asking a lot from the user. It's basically asking the user to give it everything you do. And so there needs to be a trust sort of agreed there upon the user and the platform. And if the platform isn't handling that data correctly, then the user is going to not trust it. And so in this case, at least, rightly so. And yeah, so the whole internet is on fire about this, and people are calling for Windows Recall to be recalled, if you will, or cancelled, or delayed, or whatever it may be. Some people are branding it spyware. Some people are saying that Windows Recall as a concept shouldn't exist. It's irresponsible of Microsoft to even consider putting this into the OS. If anything, it should be a program you can download. It should not be part of the OS. Lots and lots of opinions, lots and lots of thoughts around what Microsoft should and shouldn't do with the concept of recall in Windows. Dan, I'm curious on your thoughts about this and where you stand.
I have no opinion.
Oh, good. All right, moving on.
Let's move on. No, obviously, okay, so there's a lot to unpack here, right? So I think, number one, the biggest issue here was putting aside your thoughts on the actual feature itself. Let's ask the question, was Microsoft PR prepared for this? Meaning to proactively answer questions,
right,
criticisms, or concerns. The answer to that is no, they were not. And I know this from off-the-record conversations with companies and other people who feel this way, who have to deal with Microsoft. It's not just like media, right? And not just even consumers. It's other companies that deal directly with Microsoft, ISVs and stuff like that, who feel the same way. I heard of like one hypothetical, which is like, what about families that share a computer? And like
right.
Parents can now like, it was talking about like a teenager who maybe, when you're a teenager, you're always exploring different things. Let's just put it politely, whether it's mental health issues or, especially gender related type things or sexuality. And now like parents can go, and even if you have a separate account, right? If parents get access or they make the kid give them access to the computer, it's pretty easy to kind of go through and search for this stuff. Now you can make the argument, well, browsing history does that already. Although you can clear your browsing history, every time you close the browser, you can have it wiped, right? So you can't do that with recall. Recall, for it to be effective, I guess you get a recall for like 15-minute increments almost. Like every time you log into the PC.
You can pause it. So there's a button on the taskbar you can click, and you can pause it for the rest of the day. So if you are going to do something that you don't want captured by recall, there's a quick and easy way to pause the service. But yeah, if you forget to do that, then yeah, with snapshot, recall will capture it.
Yeah. So there's like, obviously there's risk here for, hackers. Like it's a thing, right? Hackers are like, oh, if I got a remote app onto your computer, I could easily access this information, which is true. But of course, if someone already has remote access onto your PC, I'd argue you're already kind of screwed.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't take much further than to install a keylogger, right? So like, the difference here, of course, it's like all in one directory, and it's like it's a little bit easier for the hacker to sort of search.
And not only that, it's historical as well. So usually with malware, it becomes effective at the point of installation, whereas recall is a historical collection. So the malware gets installed, and then it's got potentially months and months of backpedaling to do to grab all that stuff, which is a bit worse.
Yeah, that's a good point. And so it's not that we shouldn't have this feature or, like I said, the instantiation of it, how it works, that's a separate argument. I'm just saying that Microsoft didn't have the ability to answer these kind of questions and hypotheticals with coherent answers to the press and or its own partners. It was just, it literally treated this like it's no big deal.
Yeah.
Like we'll just say it's local. It doesn't go to the cloud. And that's the end of the story. And that seems woefully naive to me. If I was part of this, I'd be like, whoa, okay, neat feature. But we need to go and think of a bunch of hypothetical situations here that people and companies are going to ask about it and what our response is. Like, well, how secure is it? Where is the data stored? Is it encrypted? Why is it not encrypted? This stuff requires the Pluton chip from Microsoft to be part of your hardware. All right, what role does Pluton play in this? Like, where's it? How's it doing security? I think there's just a lot of questions here and concerns, which are legitimate, but Microsoft should have been prepared to answer those. I believe it was 24 hours later they threw up like an FAQ, which was a pretty good FAQ. It didn't go into much more detail about this stuff, but once you're doing that as a reaction, you're backpedaling, and that's never really where you want to be in this situation. Things don't become controversial if you nip it in the bud in the first place. You just, have a session on, like they could have, you mentioned this in your piece about secrecy. They want to remain completely secret about this. So they didn't tell anyone. They could have easily, 24 hours beforehand, had a briefing with press where they not only explained the feature, but it was just on security, right? Spend 15, 20 minutes explaining what Microsoft did to make sure that this is really secure. Answer those questions that the media no doubt would have come up with. And then whenever I went to press with this, they would have had the answers. Now, maybe they wouldn't have the answers, right? Maybe they would have been bad answers, which gets into the second part, which is like, it's a feature, it's flawed as a feature, which could be the case, right? But at least the media then could have, preemptively would have been like, now you may be wondering, well, what happens if this happens? Well, Microsoft says that, da, 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 da. And then when you do that, this is just like PR 101. No, there's no controversy anymore because you already answered everything. I used to make the joke about my reviews for laptops that a lot of times if I didn't get a lot of comments, specifically questions about the laptop, it means I did my job well. Because if you go into the comments for a review and it's just 20 people asking me questions, I didn't do a good review because I didn't answer what appears to be very important questions from people, right? It's the same philosophy. So I think there's just that aspect. Their PR dropped the ball on this, didn't think it was a big deal. And it was just, I don't know. It's just insane to me because security and privacy is such a feature like this. It seems like the first thing people think of, and they were just not prepared. Now, the second part, I'm less qualified to necessarily critique or praise, which is how it all works. We don't know the role of Pluton. Correct me if I'm wrong. The people who have been running this so far and finding these flaws are using it on technically unsupported hardware.
That's right. Yes.
So like, does this behave differently on a Copilot Plus certified laptop that has the Pluton hardware enabled? I don't know. Like, and it would be nice if Microsoft answered that question too, right? So we may get these things and like it may behave differently. So there are a lot of questions about how it works or why the way it is. Like maybe, one of the reasons why it's not encrypted is because it would slow down the process. That I could see that as being a legitimate thing, but I don't know the ins and out of how encryption, decryption work and the time and the amount of data, right? There's a lot of questions there. But this is like something Microsoft easily could have done a deep dive on with media and just prepare them for. But no, they had to have the Apple moment and they figured they could get away with it. But even Apple can't get away with stuff like this anymore. Apple got dragged heavily with that new ad that they showed. And I just read an article today, 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, still dragging them on it. So it's just so that's kind of my issue. But I there is time. We know one of the reasons why we don't have review units for the new Copilot Plus PCs. We're getting them very soon, but it's because they're waiting on finalized images from Microsoft for the operating system. Meaning everything we've seen so far, and the way it works and all that, including the onboarding process, where you don't really have the ability to opt in. It just, you agree to it, but you have to go into settings later and turn it off. Like that could be changed to give you a yes or no. Do you want to, so all that can still happen before the final product ships. So, but that said, if it does, a lot of this stuff does change, I think a lot of it's going to be because of this blowback that, Microsoft feels this, the pressure here. So,
yeah, no, I'm glad you mentioned that the onboarding process, because there has been a lot of backlash to that as well. It was revealed that in the current builds we have, it appears that it is it's enabled by default and you have to opt out, but the way you opt out isn't through the setup process. You have to tick a box and then it goes into settings once you hit the desktop and then you can turn it off, which is an abhorrent experience, and it should not be that way. If that's the way it ships, that is, Microsoft has missed the mark entirely. What it should be, and what I've heard is being considered, is it should be a prompt in the out-of-box experience where it describes Windows Recall and you can accept it, you can turn it on or say no thanks. That should be it. And especially with the way Windows Recall is currently, if it does ship in this way where the data is unencrypted, the user should be absolutely allowed to turn it off, and it should be prompted, given to you at the out-of-box experience. You shouldn't have to jump into a settings app to do that later, because a lot of people won't. A lot of people correctly pointed out that people really won't. They'll just sort of click through sort of mindlessly, and so Windows Recall will be enabled and the user may never even really know, and so that puts them at risk, especially if they're prone to downloading malware. I mistakenly suggested that malware is uncommon in one of my articles this week, and I got berated by the cybersecurity community, because apparently they see malware all the time on work laptops and family devices and stuff, which I guess maybe is true. I don't think I've ever seen a piece of malware ever on any family member PC. I've never installed malware. I don't even run an antivirus on my computer. I just use whatever's built into Windows, and I'm fine. And so
it's not as bad as it was years ago, mostly because years ago the primary source of distribution for software was the internet itself, via the World Wide Web. So it was easy to fake links to the software, and so you might think you're downloading the app, instead you're getting some other executable. This was obviously done big time on BitTorrent too, where you thought you were downloading an MP3 but the extension was something different. And so when you clicked it, it would install malware. I'll say malware today seems to be more of a professional hack. That is, it's used, especially I would say in corporate espionage, rather than going after John Smith, just nobody. I'm sure that's still definitely out there. It's just the easier target these days instead of malware is phishing attacks via email, where you just literally get to click a link, goes to a website, and they log in and they just take over everything. There's a lot more security now that helps prevent malware, including the fact that Microsoft has built-in antivirus software, right? That was not a thing a long time ago. You had to have Norton, Zone Alarm, or McAfee or something as protection, but that was usually on you to do it, not part of the security of the operating system. But yeah, so I would say it's still a problem, but not as big.
Yeah.
That said, someone that has access enough to your computer to get malware on it. It's not that Recall doesn't help, but it definitely makes matters worse. But I would also say if someone already has that much access to your computer, you're kind of screwed as is. Yeah. Like, it's just a matter of time before they do have everything, because they're going to put a keylogger on there and everything will be taken. So it's a matter of degrees. And I know people are calling it spyware. I think that's incorrect. I get the implication you're making or the comparison, but spyware's intent is actually to steal your data and send it back out to someone else with nefarious consequences. That's spyware. This is not that. This is supposedly a feature to help people that may have, and likely does have, some severe security concerns. But that's different. It's just like how people, I've said this before, how people misuse clickbait all the time, where they think clickbait is just a title that sounds grand, but that's different. So anyway, I don't know. Those are my thoughts on that.
Yeah. No, I pretty much agree with you. I think this has been blown way out of proportion. My personal take on this is that it's not a big deal. And I know that's probably a controversial take, but apparently not. If the Windows Central comments seem to think that people being outraged by this are wrong and this isn't a big deal, and so I'm sort of with them. Whereas people on the internet, on Twitter and on Reddit, seem to think Windows Recall is the devil and is the worst thing, the worst idea that Microsoft could have ever possibly come up with, and it's all designed to steal your data, etc., etc. So I don't know whose side is right, whose side is wrong. My personal opinion is that this really isn't a big deal if you're technical enough to understand what malware is and know not to click on random download links. I think you'll be fine. And also, don't get your laptop stolen, which to be fair, to be clear as well, rather, if your laptop is stolen and it has Windows recall data on it, if you're not logged in and your laptop was asleep, you should be okay. The recall encryption data is encrypted via BitLocker and device encryption, but that only comes into effect when you're not logged in. When you're logged in, it decrypts, and that's the problem. So that's where malware can be effective. But if you're logged out and the laptop's closed and your laptop gets stolen out your bag, for example, you should be okay. So that's not really much of a concern. It's more when you're logged in and some third-party software gets in there and scrapes that data. That is the concern lots of people have. And I totally get that concern, but I think I'm just smart enough to not go and download random stuff that could potentially do that to me. So that's probably why I'm feeling fine about it. But I do get the outrage, and I do agree that Microsoft does need to address it. They do need to solve that security concern that a lot of people do have now. And this sort of leads me into sort of my next topic about this, and that's people and how they view Microsoft and how they trust Microsoft. Because as I sort of mentioned at the top of the show, even before it was revealed that Recall stores this data unencrypted, people were already writing this feature off. Even if the data was encrypted, people were already assuming that this had a backdoor in it, that Microsoft was absolutely going to steal this, to use this data for its own purposes. That so far it seems to be not correct. People have jumped into the app. They can see that, nope, it's all done locally. It really doesn't talk to the cloud. But that hasn't stopped people from wearing their tinfoil hats and proclaiming that Microsoft is Microsoft and they will use this data, if not now, but if not now, in the future. And it sort of made me realize more than ever, because I've sort of half realized it for a little while, but more than ever, I've realized that people just don't trust Microsoft, almost to a point where people don't like Microsoft. They view Microsoft as the enemy. And so any changes and things they do to Windows is something that users have to fight against. And that's what a lot of people do on their computer. When they set up a new PC, they spend multiple hours fighting off Microsoft's choices and bad practices to make their PC their own. And so
I feel like that's still a minority of users, though.
Perhaps,
just like, with all due respect to our audience, in comments right now and stuff like that, like those are the 1%ers, not even 1%ers. It's probably 0.1%ers of the population who are both technically aware of what's going on as well as interested and paying attention, right? I don't think most users fall into either camp. And so the signal of angst as well as praise, with people going, oh, this is no big deal, who cares? It's just the media making a thing out of it, as well as the people who are, completely outraged, to me are both woefully, neither represents any group to me outside of like the nerds. Mm-hmm. And I don't mean that to be derogatory in saying that like the opinions are necessarily wrong. I just don't, I don't form my opinions about the core users of these products based off of that. That's noise to the signal. It's relevant, and you do want to pay attention to those users because you do often glean a lot of information and they make good points. But, I don't want to be like, well, we had 8 comments who, said good things and 2 said bad things. Therefore, it's like, it's got to be like 80% are okay with it, right? You don't want to draw those kind of, and I know no one actually does that, acutely, but passively, that's just how the brain works. If I expose you to nothing but negative comments, this is the problem with Twitter and social networks, right? If I just expose you to negativity all the time, you go out to the real world and think, oh, all these real people must think the same thing. And it's so not true. But your brain can't help but, lean into that. So I just want to be careful with
I think
that.
I'd say I do think there is also potential for this to become like the next big conspiracy theory in the general population, because it has happened. Like there are tech things that sort of reach the general population as conspiracy theories or myths. Things like trying to think of something that has happened like off the top of my head. Like 5G cell towers, that sort of thing. When the 5G cell towers were apparently controlling our minds or whatever it was, like that got out to the general population. That was a thing that was covered in mainstream news, etc., etc.
And now no one has 5G phones.
Yeah, right. But there's always somebody who's I know people in real life. They are a bit older than me, might I add, but I know people in real life who are convinced that adding their bank card details to Google Pay or Apple Pay is giving your bank details away to spyware or something. I don't know. Like they're convinced, and it's that sort of thing that once it gets into the general population, it's sort of always there. And Windows Recall, I don't know if it's at that level yet, but I'm worried that it's going to get to a point where people go, "Oh, isn't that the feature that spies on you?" And I don't know. I think we're worryingly close to that.
I mean, it's all degrees though, and relative in the sense that you just mentioned a really good example. People putting in their financial information into apps and stuff and just assuming it's safe. And for the most part, it is, except for every time that you get that data breach email, right?
Sure,
So
yeah.
it's actually not all that secure. We've all had those emails like on January 17th, like 8 months ago. It's like, our accounts were breached and some information was leaked out. It's just like, so we know it's not secure, but it's convenient, so people do it. There was a whole thing years ago with location tracking with GPS and phones. Is it on? Is it off? Is the app tracking you when you're not using the app? Which is why now you're asked, when do you want to use GPS tracking all the time or only when the app is open? Like, why do you think that exists? Right? It's because there were abuses or there were concerns. So there's all this technology. Like, if you look at what people have finally accepted and put up with every day, and I don't mean put up with even that's not the right word, because there's a convenience to this. It's really made lives better. Like, having a location on your phone is a game changer if you're in a new city. Like, it's really a big deal, right? But if you go from it's that Overton window kind of thing where, 15 years ago, you would have brought up like, yeah, your phone has a GPS sensor in it and it can track you all the time. Like, that's just so the NSA could track you, da 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 da. And they're going to keep tabs on you. That element still exists. And yet, how many phones have GPS on all the time, right?
Yeah.
So, like, there's a lot of this initial outrage and then it kind of fades. And it's like, that's the joke with Facebook that was made, like, where the FBI used to have to spy on people. Now literally people just go and post all the information online themselves. Like, here's what I'm doing now. Here's what I'm eating. Here's my exact location. Here's where I'm with. Here's what I look like. Right. So there's like really no kind of sense of actual privacy. And there's a sort of like you surrender to it for convenience. I do this with traveling. I was like, oh, TSA pre. Oh, okay. They need my information, all that. All right. Then you get clear. And it's like you have to do a government interview for that one. And then there's global, for clear. No, actually, I don't know, not for clear. Maybe for global entry, you need to do the interview for. But there's like all these things, and then you can stack them. I did all of them. I was just like, here, take my blood, take my semen. I don't care. You can take it all. As long as I don't have to wait in line. Because and now actually when I was coming back into the country, it was crazy with global entry. Now, like before, you had to go up to the thing, scan your passport. Then it would wait, and then you have to like do your fingerprints or something like that, or it'd snap a photo and print a receipt. Now you just walk up to it, and it just snaps your photo right away. Waits a second, goes, all right, you're clear, and then you just walk up to the security person, give them your name. They're like, they already have your info in your file, and you just walk on past. It's like obscenely fast. But like, if I told you that system existed 10 years ago, everybody would be going crazy. Like, you're going to give all the info to the government and like they're going to be, but like, I feel like if you want to know what I look like, I'm already kind of screwed. Like, I'm on YouTube, right? I do TV and broadcasts. It's not too hard to do that, but we all have this like range. I really get that one person, in comments, oh, this is it, I'm switching to Linux. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, I guarantee you it'll be just a few of you who switch to Linux, the same few that switch every year. And that's fine. Linux is there as an option. Knock yourself out. Enjoy not having modern features and an operating system that's, that if that's what you want. So like, I'm totally fine with it. I feel like if you're already buying a commercial Windows laptop, you've already set yourself up for surrendering information. And you may be like, oh, that shouldn't be the way it is. Maybe that's true, but I guarantee you already have an Android phone or an iPhone, and you already did that there. That's what made me so mad with Elon Musk's, quote a couple of weeks ago, where he criticized Microsoft for needing a login to set up a Windows 11 device. Like, is that a fair criticism? Yeah, you could maybe argue that. On the other hand, it is their operating system. They can do whatever they want. And if they feel like you having a login better enhances the experience, that's their choice. But just like it's your choice to say no, close the laptop, return it, and go buy something else. But I'm pretty sure if you go buy a Mac or if you buy a Google Chromebook, it's going to ask you to log in too. Just like when you buy a new Android phone and a new Apple phone, it's going to ask you to log in. And I had someone like in comments say, oh, you're using that to justify Microsoft's, doing that. I'm like, it's not that. I'm just saying there's no outrage for the other guys. Like, why does no one, Elon Musk, who is absolutely tweeting from either an iPhone or an Android phone, had to do the same thing on that device. He had to log in with an account. Where's that tweet? I guarantee you it doesn't exist.
I just
want
sorry, go on.
I just want consistency. I just want consistency and parity here. Like if you're going to be out, because here's the problem: if everybody bags Microsoft on this, right, and forget about the recall, even just the login thing, but they don't bag on Apple and Android. That's the reason why Microsoft does it. Because if they see everybody else doing something and putting ads into their stores or, advertising, you get a notification from Samsung about a new service. Oh, stupid ad, But if no one's writing articles and people aren't getting upset about it and doing, 9,000 words on Twitter about it, then why would Microsoft not do that too, right? But if you're always signaling out Microsoft after the fact, they are being naive, but they're also just being signaled out for behavior everyone else is already doing. Not that it justifies it, but I understand then why they do it.
The Microsoft account issue, I can see where people come from because the other platforms at the very least give you the illusion of choice. When you set up an Android or an iPhone or a Mac or an iPad, that prompt comes up when you're setting up the device. So it's like sign into an Apple ID, sign into a Google account, but you can skip it. Now, if you're on Android, yeah, you can skip it and you can technically go and get apps from the web and sideload them and stuff. And sure, you can use the device that way if you really wanted to. You'd be crazy to, but you can do that. Nobody does. On an iPhone, you'd be screwed. You can't get any apps from anywhere unless you have an Apple ID and you sign into the Apple ID on your iPhone. And so because you can skip it during that initial setup phase, people assume you don't have to use an account to use your phone and stuff and that device. And technically true, but that's only true if you only intend to use the stock apps on your iPhone. If you don't intend to use any other app, then yes, you can use your iPhone without an Apple ID. But you will use other apps. You're replying to me on Twitter. You're using an app on your phone. So you are using an account. And so it's still required in that way. On Windows, you don't get that option to skip it. And the reason you don't is because Windows is an open platform. There is nothing stopping the user from doing everything they want to do on a computer without a Microsoft account. And that doesn't help Microsoft. They'd like you to use OneDrive and Outlook and Copilot and MSN, and so they would like you to sync with a Microsoft account. And so in their eyes, they've got no choice but to force you to connect one, because if you don't, you're never going to need to. Whereas on iPhone and on Android, you kind of do need to at some point. And so that's where that comes from. It's the illusion of choice, and that's where Microsoft gets caught up, because they don't give you that illusion. They just they tell you, no, please link an account, because otherwise you never will. And
I'll also say that, in terms of the tinfoil hat people with oh, Microsoft's going to siphon this data on you. And it's like, first of all, again, billions of people in the world. I'm not sure why Microsoft suddenly cares about you. Now, I realize that's a reductive argument. And of course, there could be someone famous and all that. But here's the thing, too, with a publicly traded company, were they to be caught with this?
Right.
And it's not hard to catch, right? You can capture data leaving your internet. There are programs that intercept between your Ethernet and your computer that you could run to see what data is coming out of your computer. This is one way security researchers work, right? So you could see data coming or going related to recall if that was a thing. If they were to be caught, it's not like they would be like, oh, sorry. They would be open to, of course, massive lawsuits, including ones from investors, as well as the public, and including the government itself for fraud, right? It is illegal, believe it or not, as a company to go on record saying that this is the way this thing works and then lie about it and have it you can't go, it's all localized processing. And then they find out that they're actually not doing that. They're actually siphoning data. They can't, you can't just do that.
Right.
I guess, like I said, you can. I'm just saying there are repercussions, very serious repercussions, were there to be caught. And a company as big as Microsoft with Windows and all the amount of security, like the amount of people who study security on Windows is massive. Like the idea that they would not figure this out just seems insane to me, right? That's why, the Linux stuff and Windows and security, to me, it's like, yeah, follow the Windows security stuff, follow, the exploits, but at the same time, it's like, I don't know. This stuff is like very well studied. So I'm not really worried about that.
Yeah,
But people who think that way are always going to be paranoid.
yeah.
The 5G thing is a good example, but it has changed literally nothing in the world. So all that was just for.
I think a lot of people are even assuming that Microsoft will openly just change the terms and conditions. They might make an announcement, say, hey, starting with the next update, we will begin uploading recall data, because they're that shameless of a company.
Sure. And they could, but again, there'd be even more blowback.
It would be crazy.
But I think the bigger issue would be, enterprise, right? Mm-hmm. They would, consumers are a big aspect of Windows computer usage, but business is another. Mm-hmm. And businesses have very high demands for security. So I would think and hope that some of this passes. I'm curious about, when I review a business laptop running Windows Copilot plus Recall, it's going to be on, right? It's just because it's a business laptop doesn't mean it's not on. Now your IT administrator may disable it, which probably will happen, but there will be business laptops running this. And so I would be more concerned. I'm always more interested in what enterprise has to say on Windows and security than comments on our site.
Yeah.
With all due respect to our audience. Because business has way more invested in this literally and ensuring that it's it's legit, it works, and has appropriate security protocols there. So I'm more interested in seeing that reaction, but we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, the other thing I've seen people say will almost definitely happen, even though it probably won't, is an update coming in the future will enable Windows Recall if you've chosen not to use it. So basically, if you say no today, the next month's update might turn it on without you knowing. Here's what I'm going to say about that. If Microsoft did that, you'd know about it. Windows Recall has security measures built into it so that when the service is running, it places a visual indicator on the taskbar. There is an icon that appears in the system tray when Windows Recall is running. That icon cannot be moved. It cannot be removed. It's permanently there, and that's there for your safety. It's there for security purposes. It's there to tell you that Windows Recall is collecting data. So if something has turned it on that wasn't you can immediately see that. And so if an update in the future somehow enables Windows Recall without your consent, you will know about it and you'll be able to go in and turn it off straight away. That is a part of the Windows Recall experience that has glossed over a lot of people. They don't know that that's how that works. They seem to think it's just an invisible service that runs in the background. It's not. It's quite openly running when it's running.
I mean, and again, like if you go down this rabbit hole, like, well, they can secretly turn it on. At that point, you just need to give up on all digital technology.
Yeah, but
because I don't see, I don't see how you're drawing this distinction now. Couldn't Google do that? Couldn't Apple do that? Like, why would they be exempt from this this practice? Like, is it just favoritism? You're just like, well, I trust Apple, as if that means something, right? In this situation, you trusting Apple doesn't mean that whether they would do something like that or not. It's completely irrelevant. So I don't understand, like, if you're going down that route, like all digital stuff, you're going to have to get your own, you have to buy a really old computer, air-gapped, and run Linux on it, never go on the internet. And I'm curious, like, what's the computer even for? But even then, like, where are you going to get this air-gapped computer? How can you trust the fact that it really doesn't have, even hacked hardware on it? How many of us are qualified to open our laptops and be like, oh, what the hell is that little transistor thing there? Like, I wouldn't know. Like, that's what spies do, right? They do put this stuff into people's computers. So I feel like you go down that rabbit hole. You just got to, also Elon Musk, I'm going to continue to dunk on him because it's always fun, he's talking about security and all this, and this sounds creepy with recall. This is from the guy who put cameras inside the car that faces the driver and yet has no feature that actually does anything. And I say this as someone who owns a Model 3, so F off if you think I'm just anti-Tesla. I own the Model 3. It has a camera in it above the mirror that technically has no function. It was, in theory, supposed to be there for his robotaxi idea. Remember, when I bought my car in 2019, it was going to be within a year, I was going to be able to just, as I'm sitting home from work at my house here, my car would go drive around the neighborhood and act as an Uber without me, making me money, which is why paying the $8,000 for full self-driving would be totally worth it. And the camera was going to be in there, so in case anyone tried to damage my car, I'd have it recorded. How do I not know that that camera is not recording all the time? There's no little LED on it. Even if there was, how would I know that LED couldn't have been disabled? For all I know, what about when my security cameras record something and it goes to my drive? How do I know that's not getting uploaded at night when I come home and connects to my Wi-Fi? Right? I mean, there's just like, you go down that rabbit hole. There's just so much of this like security concern. So to hear one person call out one thing and ignore everything else, to me, I'm just like, what world do you live in? Like, all this stuff is susceptible to being hacked, right? So, I was waiting in line at security for Taipei, and there was a family and a little tiny child, and this guy just like asked the other family, he's like, "Oh, are those AirTags in his shoes?" And like they were, it turns out, yes, they were. The little kid had AirTags on his shoes, but they were like hidden. They had like little cartoon characters covered them. This guy totally like recognized it though. And like, I think it's funny that we're like, AirTags have had their own controversy, right? Because they've been found to be able to very good at stalking people, by the way, because you can just slip it into someone's bag and just track them, right? Has it stopped Apple from selling AirTags? No. And apparently people are like, yeah, I just digitally tag my kid with these things so I can see where they are all the time. Now, granted, it's your kid, and that makes sense. But I mean, there's some really scary technology out there, but people just roll with it. So
yeah, but I think
it's a little weird.
I don't know. I think Apple in particular has that luxury of just sort of being able to slide things under the rug like that. I don't think Microsoft enjoys that same luxury. I think one of the points I made in my opinion piece about this is that users just don't trust Microsoft, and therefore, some of Microsoft's bad practices have eroded that trust on Windows. And to the point where a lot of people don't like Windows. They use it because they have to, or because it's the only thing that works with their games or whatever it may be. But if they didn't have to use Windows, they wouldn't. And that, I think, is a big difference, and it's one of the reasons why, because of that eroded trust that users have with Microsoft and how they dislike Windows 11, some of the choices Microsoft have made with it, that a feature like Windows Recall, when that comes along, the concept, while I think is a great idea and very useful and helpful, it's not welcome on Windows because users don't trust Microsoft. Whereas if Apple announced the same feature, sure, there would probably be some concerning headlines like questioning if this is a good idea or not. But ultimately, people would be fine with it and be like, sure, whatever, I trust Apple. That helps because their platforms are much more locked down than Windows. One of the reasons why it was so quickly discovered that Windows Recall is insecure in this way is because Windows is an open platform. So it took a few seconds to jump into the directory, go into the system files, and find where all that stuff is stored. If Recall was an iPad feature, you would never know how that data is stored because iPad OS is so locked down that that stuff could be unencrypted for days, and you would never know because you wouldn't be able to go into the system to find that out. And apps wouldn't be able to get in there, so there would be less concern. So, Apple enjoys a luxury that Microsoft certainly doesn't when it comes to its user base and customers. People use Macs and iPads and iPhones, like the products that they use and choose to use them. Windows users, a lot of them aren't in that same camp. They are forced to use Windows, or they have no choice but to use Windows because it's all they can afford. They don't have that same bond, that same trust relationship with Microsoft. A lot of them, as I said, don't like Microsoft. They would rather not do business with them if they didn't have to. And so, I don't know. I think this whole recall debacle has shone a big light on that aspect of things. And yeah, I don't know. I think it all stems back to Microsoft's inability to be a good consumer company. I think it's just they're not good at it. They're just really not good at it. And I don't know how they fix it. I don't think they can fix it.
That said, I think all this honestly will blow over in a couple weeks.
Oh yeah, we'll be talking about something else in 2 weeks' time. Absolutely, yeah.
The thing is, it's like, in terms of my personal opinion of the feature, I'm excited about it.
Me
Excited
too.
as hell.
I think it's great.
When I was hanging out with Qualcomm, their PR, there was a moment where she was using her phone and she had a movie list that she created that people for movie ideas that she had to watch, and she created a list, but she didn't remember what app she created the list in or where it went to, which I kind of understand a little bit. I've had that happen. I've had the where'd it go issue happen, especially on an Apple device. But it was funny. But had she had recall, she could have on her phone, she could have just searched movies list and it would have found it, right? So like, I'm personally really excited about this feature. I'm not really worried about the security implications. But then again, I could honestly say I'm also not committing crimes on my computer, which I do have to often wonder, or looking at nefarious things or questionable things on my computer, which I do have to wonder, like, how much outrage of this is coming out from dudes who just have like a massive Pornhub account and like, everything, and they have like gigs of just porn on their computer. Some of it is like, if someone knew, it's not just like your normal porn, it's like the weird fetish stuff.
God.
So they're just like, great. Now I gotta worry that Microsoft is somehow going to see my weird German fetish porn.
Here's the thing:
right?
Microsoft already knows you've got that. There's so much other telemetry in Windows that reports that data that you don't even know about. That it's already done. Like they already know.
That's what Satya does at night. He just goes home and he's like, "All right, let's look at this guy in Wyoming, what he's looking at." And taps into his computer. It's actually a live feed. He could see your webcam.
Yeah.
Remember the webcam stuff too? I mean, that was another one. There was a point where people like didn't want web cameras on their laptops.
Oh, I still see old
know.
people with a bit of tape over their laptop cameras. Yeah,
I mean that was the funny thing with Zuckerberg. He did that too.
Even he doesn't trust it.
Now at least that's why the newer computers do have like a slide and security, and it disables and all that. But that's the concern, right? But then again, and you can disable the microphones too, right? But at least with the cover, when it physically goes over it, all right, I blocked that camera.
Yeah.
Other ones like Lenovo, it just kills the circuit for it.
Right.
But you're taking their word for it.
Yeah, you never know.
How do you really know, right? So again, I feel like on all security aspects, you can like get into the weird conspiracy stuff. Like, how do you really know though? Just like I said, someone was telling me what the Tesla stuff. They're like, oh, in my car, I can actually see the camera in the app, because in the app you can view the security cameras. Yeah, I got like 4 cameras I can view, but they're all outside. I don't have one on the inside, and it was supposed to help with full self-driving, so that if you're dozing off or looking at your phone, it's supposed to like get your attention. Mine doesn't do any of that. I can't access the camera through the app, and it does. I don't have full self-driving. I have autopilot, but it doesn't do that. Now, maybe I got to check. Maybe the 2019 model was one of those ones where they put the hardware in there, but it wasn't connected or do anything. Okay, fair enough. Again, I'm assuming that's true. I'm trusting it's true. I'm trusting the fact that it can't be enabled remotely, right? So there's all this like trust in there that goes into any of this stuff. Not that I'm saying that people are wrong for questioning the Copilot. I think they're absolutely right to do it. I just think you go down that rabbit hole, it gets really funny really fast. Pretty soon you're just, you're Ted Kaczynski living in a cabin in the woods, sending not so nice packages to people, So anyway, that was a Unabomber joke for those who don't know Ted Kaczynski, for all the kids. Anyway, I suppose we can move on to Computex. So there wasn't like a ton of news at Computex. Well, I mean, it was actually. Intel announced Lunar Lake, and the joke was, of course, it's like the 4th time they've announced Lunar Lake. This is what Intel does, though. Intel is smart in their PR, because what they do is, they trickle out information throughout the year so that they're always in the press, right? They don't do the hold on to a secret thing, and then they wait the night before and like, all right, here's our thing, and they string you along. But they do it also because they're being extremely transparent. Like Intel is like, here's our roadmap for 5 years. We're doing 4 nodes in 5 years. Here are all the chips that are coming out. Here's, the goals for them and stuff like that. So Intel's being very transparent. They did show off more of Lunar Lake. I can tell you for a fact that they are feeling the pressure from Qualcomm. Lunar Lake was not supposed to ship until the end of this year, and that was going to be in limited quantities. So some like hero devices would come out with it. It was supposed to ship in mass in early 2025, right? And they probably would have done a big thing at CES with it and showing off all the new laptops, just like they did this year with Meteor Lake. Instead, at Computex, they showed off the chip and I believe some laptops running it. And they did a deep dive. We had our Ben Wilson. Intel did pay for him to go out there, but they did what's called the Intel Tech Tour, which I've done for the last few years. And they do these like extreme deep dives on the chip where they break it apart and they talk about how all the memory works and all this kind of stuff. But it's clear Intel's feeling the pressure, which is so now they not only showed it off at Computex, but now it's supposed to start shipping in September. I still think it'll be limited numbers, but they're trying to get it out there as soon as possible. The big thing with this one is this is the efficiency design. So the last one broke everything apart into these little chiplets, and it gave them a bunch of new options. Now they're going to another node shift, and they're also focusing on efficiency. Will these be as efficient as ARM? Oh, absolutely not. Of course not, right? Will it close the delta enough so that they become competitive with ARM? I actually do believe they will. I've always talked about this. There was this point in diminishing returns with processors and battery life where like if one laptop gets 12 hours, the other one gets 14 hours. Obviously 14 hours is better, but at some point it's like, now if we're talking 18 hours and 20 hours, like, it doesn't become as important because if you're coming home at the end of the day and your laptop has 48% battery life, you're absolutely going to plug it in to recharge it overnight. Only a mad person would be like, oh, I'll just risk it. Who knows tomorrow? So, and this is the problem with the M1 chip, right, with Apple, which is the M1 is so good that very few people outside the professionals or people with disposable income feel the need to go get the M3 or what will soon be the M4, especially when combined with the fact that Apple really changes its own laptop, meaning they're not giving you an option to a reason to upgrade your laptop for like a really new feature. Like, oh, the screen is slightly brighter now. It's like, okay, last one was pretty bright. So, but if your computer was like really fast and got really good battery life 3 years ago, you're not going to feel very strongly to upgrade. At least with the Windows ecosystem, I think that will happen too, where we're going with chips. But at least there's innovation going on with form factors and design and different things, so that at least you may go from a clamshell laptop to, I don't know, one with a folding display or one with 2 displays or just a regular 2-in-1. Or maybe you'd switch companies and try out their different software, right? So at least there's that option there. But I do have high hopes for Lunar Lake. I think it actually will be, you're going to still get all the performance you'll get from Intel, including more performance, and you're going to get much better battery life. But how much does that translate to real life? We got to really see. I still think, ARM is absolutely going to beat it on power per watt. But I'm not sure, how that translates into real everyday comparisons. Qualcomm pivoted a little bit at this event where, sure, they have 45 tops for their NPU, makes them the king right now, if you disregard NVIDIA and RTX, of course. But, Apple's M4 chip is only 38 tops, so it's powerful, but still not technically as powerful. Intel is going to have theirs, will be around 45 tops for Lunar Lake. But, Qualcomm pivoted and said, our NPU, though, is the most efficient, even beating Apple. They haven't checked the M4 yet, but at least when it came to the M3, which is only 18 tops, they are still more efficient than Apple per watt for the NPU. And why that's a big deal is if we're talking about AI and using the NPU, the ideal here is to have it running basically all the time or when needed for these applications, right? Sure, it's cool to have AI when you go into like a Paint app and you're going to do something with imaging and stuff. The NPU kicks in. But for something like Copilot or having a true digital assistant, which is where I think a lot of this is headed, you're going to want that thing kind of on as often as possible. So it being efficient is going to be important. So an RTX GPU will crush Qualcomm in terms of performance for the NPU. You can get something that's like 4 to 5 times the performance in tops with an RTX video card compared to Qualcomm. But that would be similar also to just be like running a video game all the time on your computer, right? So it's just not efficient. So all this stuff with AI and NPUs, sure, the power is important, but the efficiency is probably even more important since this is supposed to be sort of on more of the time than not, at least ideally. So I thought that was kind of interesting. AMD also had this new Strix Point processor. They got some a cool new laptop coming out with Asus, which is coming out in July. I'm going to do a little bit deeper dive on this analysis in the coming days, but my hunch is I think AMD is going to get their butt whipped in laptops going forward.
Oh wow, really?
I don't see what they offer. Like you could say before, Qualcomm didn't offer much, uh, for the Windows ecosystem. It was there, but it was hardly compelling. It didn't sell well. It was there, but it was being propped up entirely by Microsoft, Qualcomm, and occasionally one of its partners would take a bullet and make a device, right? But that's because Microsoft knew long term it needed to do this because ARM was going to be the future. And so it did. And now it looks like it's paying off, right? Because Qualcomm had this Nuvia thing and it's all coming together. Uh, so now you have a system where, some estimates were putting like ARM PCs, and I believe this counts Apple, I'm not really sure, will be 40 to 60% of the market within 3 years. That seems very ambitious to me, but let's just say it's even remotely close, right? Like, what is the selling point then for AMD? It's x86, same as Intel. I would just argue Intel is a lot more advanced, especially in their roadmap and what they're doing and executing and the features that they offer, as well as the R&D that they can provide to companies. So I don't know where AMD fits in this. I think AMD will continue to do well in servers. They'll continue to do well in desktop. But even after all these years with Ryzen and laptops, they're still a blip. I still see, I think they made progress. There are more AMD laptops, I would say, today than there were a few years ago. But it's not an overwhelming number. It's mostly Intel. Intel controls the premium laptop market 100%. And we've talked about this before, right? There are very few 4K AMD laptops. There are very few, if any, convertible AMD laptops. There are very few, if any, 5G AMD laptops. It's a weird thing, and I don't know how they're going to continue. Moreover, I just don't know why OEMs would stick with them. I heard from a pretty reliable source that Strix Point, AMD's new flagship chip, costs more than Intel's. Like the whole point of AMD's thing was like, we're cheaper, we're more efficient. Well, sorry, it looks like Qualcomm just slid into that position. So I don't know where AMD fits in this. Like, I don't know why an OEM would continue to want to work with AMD, especially if, say, Lunar Lake is really good, right? Maybe it's a complete bomb, so I'd be wrong, in which case that's AMD's opportunity. I don't think it's going to be. So then you have Intel Classic x86 firing on all cylinders, new node, competitive with ARM, but not, can't match it performance per watt, but it's still very fast. Plus, it has complete legacy support. There are no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Qualcomm, though, you got the efficiency stuff. They got the pricing right. They're scaling properly. Like, where does AMD fit into this? So that's my only kind of concern. On that, saw a lot of mini PCs, which was cool. It's clear the industry is definitely shifting back to a mini PC kind of design, even though Intel killed Nuke, the NUCs. It was bought by Asus, and now we're seeing I saw a lot of mini PCs coming back, offering both Intel and AMD options, which is nice. So we'll be doing a lot more on that stuff. And then, there was the handheld gaming. There was the, who's that company? It's escaping my mind now. It is, Zotac. They've been around a long time. Zotac is a new AMD-based handheld gaming device coming out. So it's in the vein of ROG Ally stuff, a little bit different. So we have an article, more information coming out about that soon, though. But again, handheld gaming seems to be growing quite a bit. It still has, I think, a lot of pain points, specifically with Windows. And these chips need to get even better still. But they did announce ROG Ally X, so they're pulling a Steam Deck here. It's not Steam Deck 2, it's Steam Deck OLED. This is ROG Ally X, so it's not ROG Ally 2. So they changed and modified a bunch of things, including the biggest one is literally the battery. It's gone from a 40 watt hour battery to 80 watt hour. Like, they literally doubled it, which is incredible because they didn't really change the size of the device. Like, the front size is the same. It's just a little bit thicker. And it's because they completely redesigned the interiors and they put in better thermals. You have now a full-size SSD in there, which you can swap out very easily. They changed up the joysticks a little bit. They tweaked a lot of stuff. They didn't put a new processor in it. It's still the same display. I was told that they weren't going to go to Strix Point because it's expensive, and the performance increase they would have got from it compared to the hit in battery life and hit in thermals, plus the increase in cost, wasn't worth it for where they wanted to be. And I think that was a smart decision. It goes to show you that, not everything AMD touches is gold either. So that's coming out real soon. We'll have a lot more coverage of that. I'm looking forward to it. But, battery life was the big downside of the ROG Ally. Like, you'd get maybe 1 to 3 hours of battery life. But if you literally double the battery size, like now you're getting 3 to 6 hours, that's a huge difference. Now you're going to start to enter Nintendo Switch territory, and I think that's pretty great. So anything else that caught your attention, Zach, at Coffee Text?
So the chips you talked about, the AMD and Intel chips, they caught my interest only because they were being advertised, to my knowledge, as Copilot Plus chips. So these are Intel and AMD's answers to that. Right now, when Microsoft announced Copilot Plus on May 20, they did sort of say all of the big names would be on board, Intel, AMD, and Qualcomm, but it's quite clear that only Qualcomm had laptops ready for the June 18th launch date. Now, AMD, I think, saying that their first their first Copilot Plus chips will begin shipping in laptops starting in July. However, it doesn't appear that Copilot Plus features will be available on these devices until later in the year at the earliest. It's sort of a bit vague as to when they will show up. Q4, I think, is what they're saying right now. But that means that there is technically at the very least, some timed exclusivity for Copilot Plus with Qualcomm. And I don't know if that's if it is an actual exclusive, or if this is more of like just a partnership thing, more maybe as a thank you to Qualcomm for putting the effort in and really sort of bringing that moment together for Microsoft. And I also wonder if maybe it's, because I can't help but feel like Microsoft is sort of trying to downplay Intel and AMD's involvement here, at least for now. And I'm wondering if they're doing that because they want to encourage app developers to take Windows on ARM seriously for a little bit. Because as Dan just mentioned, Intel's Lunar Lake stuff appears to be more or less competitive with Qualcomm's offering. Like, if Qualcomm wasn't in the market, Intel would be being celebrated right now for whatever this new chip is. Yeah. And so you could make the argument that Qualcomm is still irrelevant because Intel's caught up already, and it's only been 2 weeks or more or less. Like, if Intel's going to be launching this chip this late summer, early fall, what is another few months wait at this point? And so I don't know. I'm thinking maybe Microsoft is worried that Intel and AMD are going to sort of dampen the fire that is Qualcomm's new chip and Windows on ARM, as Microsoft is trying to bring up Windows on ARM and sort of encourage it and convince developers and users that Windows on ARM is the real deal now. And I think that's what they're doing right now, is they're trying to dampen Intel and AMD just for now, just for as long as they can, until all the big names have developed their apps natively for ARM. I don't know. It's strange, and it's quite clear that no one's happy with Microsoft. We talked about this in the last episode, but Intel and AMD, I think, especially, are a little bit peeved with how this has all come together. And they were very loud at Computex about these chips being Copilot Plus capable. And I think even Intel was saying things like, like Copilot Plus features could easily run on Meteor Lake. And it's just like they're throwing Microsoft under the bus.
So it's true because Intel came out the gate with Meteor Lake pushing the AI PC.
That's
thing,
right.
They were the ones to carry that banner. They were the ones to first have a Copilot key, right? So they got that. And then now Qualcomm's getting its moment in the spotlight. Personally, I just see it as Microsoft giving a spotlight to each of the OEMs.
Except AMD.
Where they have something to offer, but of course, that's not what they want, right? They want to, have the spotlight all to themselves, which is what a company would do.
And I'd argue the Copilot Plus key spotlight, it doesn't hold a candle to the May 20 spotlight, which was the recall and co-creator and all that other stuff, which was way bigger and way more exciting than whatever Microsoft was doing in January.
Right, but I mean, the first gen AI PCs, which, by the way, I love AMD, again, to show their messaging. They're like, talk about their new chips. They're like, this is the third generation NPU. Like, what the hell are you talking about? You're on third generation now? Like, come on, man. But yeah, with Intel, so they were first out the gate. They do get AI features mostly tied to Windows Studio effects, which absolutely do run better thanks to the NPU. That's no uh, joke. But, again, this comes back to Pluton. It's Pluton is required for Copilot Plus and in Recall. And I said I don't know why. So for those who don't know, Pluton it's a secured trusted platform module. It's a version of TPM. You could still have TPM 2.0 and you can have this feature on there as well. But you can also just have standalone Pluton. This is what I can tell you. Last year when I was in Malaysia with Intel, there was a Q&A and Pluton was brought up. Intel was extremely dismissive of it. Like, we're not using that. We don't believe in it. That's Microsoft, whatever. Like, I mean, I'm not even like reading into it. It was very like arrogantly dismissed. And now Pluton is required to run this stuff. You know who has embraced Pluton? Qualcomm and AMD.
Yeah.
So if you look at, there's a lot of AMD 6000 and up laptops all have Pluton enabled, and Qualcomm's been using it since the HCX Gen 3. Intel doesn't use it. I think they would rather rely on TPM 2.0 and their own vPro suite, and I think they're like, that's enough. We don't need anything else. And I think now they're, and who knows why? Like I said, I don't know what Pluton actually does here. It would be nice if Microsoft explains it. Assuming the reason is legit, Intel's caught in a place where, like, with their pants down, it's like, oh, we need this thing to get Copilot Plus certified, and we arrogantly dismissed it and said we weren't going to be bothered. So I think they're in a kind of a weird position right now. And I'd love to unpack that a little bit more and figure out more what's going on with that. And the same thing applies to RTX, right? This comes down to the tension that, again, we want privacy with these devices. In a lot of cases, that means having hardware, some kind of actual physical chip on there for either encryption, a secure enclave, what have you. And then people also want AI to be extremely functional. So what's going to happen is, like, say, they come out and, the security feature is absolutely required to have Pluton. People are going to be like, oh, that's just Microsoft. They want you to go buy more laptops or buy another desktop computer. So they're making that, like the TPM 2.0 thing, right? Like, it's just a money grab. But then it's like, well, we're doing it because we want to have security for those AI features you've been all saying you really want. But, so it's like, it's going to be funny how this all kind of balances itself. But you're right. These new laptops coming out, like that new AMD one in July from Asus, these are Copilot ready PCs. That's what they should be calling them.
Yeah.
But that's what they really are. They're not going to ship with Copilot Plus. They'll be, because as far as I know, and you can speak better to this, the coding for x86 and Copilot hasn't been done yet.
It's been done. It's ready internally. They just haven't shipped the bits to like publicly. Yeah, no, they built this for all of them, all the architecture at the same time. It's just, again, like, there must be some partnership behind the scene between Microsoft and Qualcomm that's allowing this to stay Qualcomm exclusive for at least a short time. And AMD or Intel are not happy.
I mean, and that's fine. I think Microsoft rebuilt its Surface products around Qualcomm.
They did.
HP wiped their entire brands off the map and are starting anew with new brands, right? For Qualcomm called this PC Reborn event. On stage, there was, and I got photos of it, it was them with every CEO from every major corporation that is participating with Qualcomm. At this event, they call up on stage the CEO of Lenovo. Satya he videoed in. Then there was Acer, there was Asus, Dell, and HP. All their CEOs were physically there, came on stage talking about their partnership with Qualcomm. Unheard of. Like, unheard of, at least for ARM and Qualcomm, right? But they all see this as a major shift. And so, like, I think what Microsoft is doing with this Copilot Plus is giving it a 6-month exclusivity for breathing room, basically.
Yeah.
So the light can shine on these devices. people actually go buy them because they're confident that if you do buy them, you're going to be very happy with them. I'm a firm believer that I have seen nothing to suggest that what Qualcomm has presented in data and promised and the experiences we tried is lying about anything.
Right.
Again, it would be fraud if they were. But the commitment from all these companies publicly is just unheard of when it comes to ARM. It's just never happened like this. So I think it's a big game changer. I think Microsoft is like, we're going to give it a 6-month spotlight so that it can actually have a fair chance to catch on, because Intel does have, I don't want to say an unfair market advantage, but it is by far the dominant leader. And so look how fast they're pivoting. They're trying to get their new chip out within 3 months, right? And so they're trying to cut that sort of that honeymoon phase down as quickly as possible. And so I think Microsoft's like, we want ARM to be taken seriously. We're going to give it a good 6 months.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be surprised, this was also teased at the event that we should mention, that we see a second wave of devices being announced towards the holiday season. And Cristiano, the CEO of Qualcomm, got up on stage and showed a slide. And he said, so, we're not just sticking to mobile. And there was a picture of an all-in-one PC as well as a mini PC.
Nice.
And so they're going to move to desktop too. And I don't see why they wouldn't. I've always said this chip can scale up very easily. Or, I don't want to say easily. It's still hard engineering work, but you know what I'm saying? Like 12 cores is what the Elite is. They can go to 14 cores. They can go to 16 cores. They can go to 18 cores. They can do as many cores as they want to and scale this thing up for performance to meet the demands. Now, I think it'll still be all-in-ones and mini PCs because there's still the GPU problem if you go to like a full tower, right? You're going to be like, all right, so let me put my 4090 with this. Does that work? Technically, there's no actual limitation why the GPU can't work outside of the software and drivers needs to be done to make that happen. But they said there's no technical reason why that couldn't happen. But I think it'll take a while before they get there. So I think you'll see even more devices. There's technically, I believe, around 22 were announced as coming out over the next couple of months. I think we'll see a second wave. I wouldn't be surprised if Lenovo announces more in the September timeframe or whenever IFA is in Berlin. Lenovo historically is the biggest, really the only major PC manufacturer that goes to IFA and announces quite a few devices. So I wouldn't be surprised if they announce some new Lunar Lake ones as well as even maybe more ARM devices. I like to see them update the X13S, which is already an ARM product, to go to the new Snapdragon stuff. So.
Yeah, I'm excited for the Qualcomm stuff. Yeah, I mean, the big test for me is, will the new ARM laptops be able to run this podcast and this live stream? Because famously, the Surface Book 3 15-inch could not do it. And ever since then, I've only used powerful desktops to do this show. I'm hoping I can go back to trying it on a laptop, and I'm hoping that these ARM laptops can do it. So we'll wait and see. It's interesting times. The launch date is June 18, right? So we'll know in the next couple of weeks if these laptops sort of live up to their claims.
Yeah. Sarah says Ryzen Copilot PC Plus devices are powered by powerful silicon, offer all-day battery life, and come with features like recall, co-creator, and live captions. Availability starts June 18th. A few things wrong with that. No, pre-orders start June 18th. Availability starts in July. Otherwise, we would have that device right now, but we don't. So it's coming later. And that's just one. Some of the other ones are coming later than that. It does have a pretty powerful NPU. It's 50 tops. It is all-day battery life. Depends on the chip and what it's clocked at, as well as the battery size of the device in question. So all these things are variables. I think it'll be okay. But yeah, it won't be. It's going to be a Copilot Plus ready PC. I think that's an important distinction. I'm pretty confident we're not going to see Copilot Plus on these devices launch at the same time. I think the feature will be enabled later on. That's just AMD and Asus. What you witness when you see that on stage, by the way, and them going, oh, it's Copilot Plus and AMD, and we're all like, yeah, that's not coming till later. That's them publicly trying to muscle Microsoft into making it happen earlier, because it could if they wanted to, but that's them publicly pressuring Microsoft, So they're like, well, we're going to commit to this now, and everybody wants to be a part of it, right? NVIDIA did the same as well. So there you go. Anything else we want to talk about before we go?
Don't think so.
Cool. Well, do you have a thing of the week?
Oh no, I don't. I've not even thought. Thing of the week. No, I don't. Do you?
Yeah. Yeah, I do. Actually,
wow.
hold on. Sarah's still saying earlier that they are Copilot Plus PCs. Yeah, they could say that all they want, and they will be.
They will be. Yeah.
When they grow up, and they get an OS update that enables that feature. Out of the box, they are not Copilot Plus PCs. Lisa Su has a vested interest in this and trying to make them sound like they're as good as Qualcomm, of which they are not. So, with that note, yeah, my thing of the week would be Furiosa. I saw it last week before I went on my trip. As someone who saw Mad Max Fury Road 3 times in the cinemas and probably about 12 times since, I'm a huge fan of that movie. Furiosa exceeded my expectations, which were already high. I actually think it's a better movie in some ways because it has an actual deeper story to it. But if you owe it to yourself to go see it in the cinema, it's one of those movies that is just like Fury Road was. It's just overwhelming in terms of the sight and sound, the set design, the costumes. I thought the story was great. There's a few Easter eggs in it. I just thought it was a blast. Between that and Dune 2, it's like that's just some of the best movies to see in cinema. It makes you upset when people aren't going to the movies as much. And part of that has to do with the strike and the fact that it's very inconsistent at the movies right now, where there'll be a huge movie and then 3-4 weeks there won't be anything. But go see it. I thought it was outstanding. That's from a fan of Fury Road. I will say it's been fun to read the comments online. There are a lot of virgin men out there. I can only assume. I don't actually know their sexual lives, but who are so upset that this Mad Max saga isn't driven just by a dude just doing a John Wick thing or something, which is weird because if you watch the movie, for one, there's a significant guy role in it that's not advertised, which I thought was really good. Two, if you watch Fury Road, that movie's driven primarily by the female narrative in there, where it's the men who destroyed the world and it's the women who are trying to save it. And Mad Max just happens to come along for the ride. He's very pivotal, don't get me wrong, but the movie is really about Furiosa and about the mothers and all that kind of stuff. So to have watched Fury Road and not understand the female elements as being key to that film and then complain about it in Furiosa, to me, is absolutely hilarious. But people are bad at a lot of stuff in life, so it doesn't surprise me. But I would definitely go see it. Yeah, so that's my thing. Other than that, I guess we'll be back for the podcast whenever we do get a chance. We'll do some Q&A with the audience now if they still have questions. We do record this. I don't know. We're trying to get a little bit more regular again. That is the goal. But for now, we'll see. We'll come back. I could definitely tell you, June 18th will be a big day. I don't think I'll be around that day, but at least on the 19th, maybe we could do the podcast, or the 20th, because that's the day all these PCs go on sale and will be available. And, trial by fire. We'll see. Did Qualcomm actually deliver, or is it a bust? And where does, recall come down on all this? So definitely tune into that podcast. I think it'll be very exciting. We should have quite a few reviews by that point to make it an interesting discussion. On that, follow me at Twitter, Daniel_Rubino, Rebino. Same thing on Threads, Zach, ZACBOWDEN. And as always, thanks for tuning in. We'll talk to you next time.
Awesome. So we will hang around for a few minutes to answer any questions you may have. We're not going to hang around too long because I need to head off very shortly, but we've got about 5-10 minutes here. So if you have any questions, put them in the chat and we will answer them. I'm just reading some.
Sarah.
Sorry, go on.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, Sarah. Asus has a laptop coming out June 18th or around that time, but that's the ARM one. They have an ARM one. It's not the AMD one doesn't come out till July. But Acer, Dell, HP, Lenovo, and Samsung, those are all the ARM devices with Copilot Plus. So those, yeah, those come out June 18th. Some of them. Dell won't be out till the end of June. I don't know when Acer actually comes out. There's only one Dell that's coming out, I believe, at the end of the month. The Inspirons, stuff like that, are coming sometime later. And yeah, that's all I can tell you so far.
I'm just reading some of the comments on my editorial on Reddit. One of the comments, which has 339 upvotes, says, I like how this article completely ignores that it came out recently that Recall stores the information unencrypted plain text. The article has a whole section on it. People are so stupid. I just don't understand anyone or anything. Why are people just like this? Just read it.
It's because people want attention. They think they're
crazy.
always the smartest in the room, and they've never been humbled by real life or had real challenges. I don't know.
But it has 338 upvotes. Other people are like, I agree. This article doesn't have that.
Yeah. That's why social media is pretty much trash, and I will look at it, but it's easy to ignore as well. I like talking to real people. When I go to these events, I spend a lot of time talking to other analysts. I say other analysts. I'm not technically an analyst, but people who are analysts for a living. I'll talk to other journalists. I'll talk to sometimes the influencers, but and I talk to the people who actually work at the companies. We have a lot of behind the scenes conversations that I can't put into print or quote them on, but you learn a lot about what's happening here. I trust those people, and those people's opinions I have high value for. Random people on the internet whose credentials I have no idea. I'm sorry, like, you could make a good argument. Like, if you want to take the time and lay out the facts, by all means, that's awesome. I'll engage with that. That's something I can work with. If you're just like, this article is dumb, or he doesn't talk about this when you clearly did, it's just like, yeah, I'm not gonna like believe anything you said. Just like when I reviewed the Dell XPS 14, and then one of the top comments was like, Dell's been trashed since 2020 and all this, and like, criticized the function keys, and he criticized the whole thing. And I'm like, have you used the XPS 14? Because it just came out. I was like, no, I haven't. That's what he said. He hasn't used a Dell product since 2020. I'm like, why am I listening to anything you're saying? Like, you haven't touched this laptop or used it. Why would I value your criticism of it? Like, it's just weird. I don't know why people think they're entitled to that.
Just reading another comment. I don't know about, air quotes, lost all trust, effing clickbait titles, blah, blah. He's referring to, he assumes that lost all trust is something that I say in the article. I say Microsoft has lost trust, not lost all trust. It's just,
right.
He's complaining about clickbait, but he's comment baiting.
and again, that wouldn't even be clickbait.
No, it wouldn't. It wouldn't.
Again,
people are crazy.
Is Satya Nadella gay? And then you're like, you start the article like, no, he's not. But that's clickbait, right?
Yeah.
Making a headline that is engaging. I love it. It's like, in order for people to read the article, you have to have an engaging headline. But if the headline is a really good, engaging one, people are like, that's clickbait. But it's not clickbait because it's just engaging. Clickbait is meant to deceive you. Like, if you... Wait, what's the title of your article? Oh, PR disaster. Microsoft lost trust with its users, and Windows recalls the straw that broke the camel's back. Imagine if you click that, and then it's just Zach saying, actually, this is no big deal. There is no PR disaster, and everything's fine. That's clickbait, right? Again, but definitions, people aren't good at critical thinking. I think it's one thing that has been lost, in especially schools in the United States. But they are good at, voicing their opinions on everything.
This is my favorite comment on Reddit. It has 29 upvotes. Someone effed up when the biggest fanboy since Windows Phone era writes bad articles about Microsoft. As if I don't criticize Microsoft on an almost weekly basis. Right. I'm always complaining about things Microsoft are doing on Windows, but it's fine.
You do complain a lot about the UX and UI stuff.
Windows
stuff that I don't notice at all. Stuff I never notice.
That's it. It's just people have their own narrative that they want to propel all the time. Just be honest in the title. I do my best to be honest. Like, it's, Dan's totally right. The whole clickbait thing, people misuse the term clickbait. A lot of the time the headline's correct, but people get annoyed if the headline is sensational. But sensational doesn't mean incorrect. It can be sensational and correct. It's just choosing your words.
No, that's exactly it. People mean to say sensational, but they think they're being clever because they say clickbait. I've seen the same thing with vaporware. People say something is vaporware. I'm like, it's shipped. It's available. Like, what they mean is like it's not a good product, or there's something wrong with it, or it was a letdown to them. But that's not like vaporware is you announce a product and then you, like vaporware is what Apple did with that what was it with the wireless charging they did a few years ago.
AirPower.
Like that's vaporware.
And Surface Neo vaporware.
Yeah, that's vaporware. But people just like hear a word, and it's hilarious too because you live in an age, especially with AI, you can like literally ask Copilot before you hit publish, like, hey, what does vaporware mean? And it'll answer within seconds for you. But people are like, nah, I'll just wing it. I just assume I know what I'm talking about. I know all the words.
All right. Doesn't look like there's any comments coming in, which is...
Sarah says, I can't wait for recall. Pretty sure I want a new Surface laptop for X Elite. Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be huge. I get the concern, but also just disable it if you don't want to use it. I don't know. I'm very excited about it, though. As someone who deals with a lot of data, I'm very excited about it. But again, I guess if you just use your computer, as I said, for porn or video games, you may be less excited. On the other hand, I was chuckling because I guess if you have a massive porn collection, recall might actually be very helpful. Maybe I should write that article.
You think they bundled a SLM that understands the imagery of popular pornography?
Only one way to find out. I spent 30 days with Windows Recall having it analyze my porn collection. Here's what I found out.
That's
not even and that's not a clickbait headline.
That's either. A fantastic idea for a story.
Headline. Yeah, but that's not clickbait. You know?
No, it's not clickbait because you're going to get the answer to that question. Does it understand porn?
Yeah,
it's not clickbait.
It's actually a fascinating question.
Yeah.
Because then you could be like, it's racist. I'd ask it to find like black people or Hispanics or Asian, and it was like it would just return white people.
Yeah, jeez.
Like, this is how we get the podcast.
Okay. So if we think it's a PR nightmare now, let's throw racism into it.
Yes.
Someone was asking, what do you know about the in-case designed by Microsoft accessories? I know that they are one-for-one copies of the old Microsoft and Surface accessories that they no longer make. They've just changed the Microsoft logo to a little leaf logo. They're not planning to make any new accessories, I don't think, under this brand. I think it's quite literally just reselling the older designs because they do have a bit of a loyal following. Things like the ergonomic mouse and the ergonomic keyboard and the IntelliMouse and stuff. That's all being rebranded as in-case. They're supposed to be coming this year. I don't think they're available yet, but maybe sometime in the next few months.
I'm a bit confused by the slight hysteria going on because if your PC was compromised enough for a malware program to scrape the data from recall, surely it could also be key logging. Yeah, I said the same criticism. The only thing you could say is technically it'd be a little bit easier. And actually, Zach did make the good point that you could actually go back in history before the point that the malware was installed and still collect info. But you're right. If someone installed malware on your computer, one way or another, you're totally screwed. Like, something about you is going to get out or be held ransom, and it won't be good. That's not a justification, but I think that's true to it. Zach, do you think the SQ3 could be backported to future editions of Surface Go line?
No, I don't think so.
I would say no.
I'm going to say if Surface Go ever does do ARM, it will be with a new Qualcomm chip.
Yeah, it'll be a Snapdragon X scaled down to 6 or 8 cores.
Yeah.
I'm confident in that. I'm not saying I heard that. If you listen to what the CEO of Qualcomm says and what I've been saying about the platform scaling up and down, that's just the obvious place for it to go, is to do that. They can only conquer so many markets at once, though, especially with the Gen 1 product, and Gen 2 is due out next summer. But I'm confident that they're going to do that, and they'll put that in there. So I don't think SQ3 will have much of a future. It'll be such a performance gap. It would just be ridiculous.
Yeah. Zach, why do you think people don't trust Microsoft? Do you think age demographics have something to do with that? I don't think age is a driving factor, but there's definitely different generations of people who view Microsoft differently. People who grew up in the 90s and who were teenagers / young adults in the 90s will probably have a different view of Microsoft than people my age do, for example, who, Microsoft in the 90s were evil, as I think is fair to say. They weren't great, and Microsoft earned a reputation. That's where the M and then the S for but as a dollar sign comes from, that era, because Microsoft were greedy and wanted money, and they were wanting to just take out any other company that gets in their way, etc., etc. But then, I'd say from 2007 to 2015, maybe 14, then when Microsoft were the good guys, they finally sort of saw the light, and they were good for a little while. And then things got bad again from 2015 up until arguably today.
Although, to be fair, I think again people overstate this maybe a bit much, because if you look who's been dragged in front of U.S. government and dragged for security and privacy against the EU, Microsoft has had its moments. Obviously, the Activision thing caused a little bit of a stir. There's some concern over in Europe over Teams being bundled. But for the most part, Apple has got way bigger problems going on right now with all this stuff.
Yeah.
And Google is increasingly having problems too, with data security, ads, their Play Store and practices. Microsoft has actually seemingly escaped most of that. So I think this is not a great look for them. But I think comparatively speaking, they're actually doing pretty well when it comes to the PR front.
Yeah. But yeah, I think people aren't a fan of Microsoft / Windows right now because of some of those bad practices in Windows 11 around, MSA being forced, to ads in Start and File Explorer and settings, to Windows not adhering to app defaults like your browser choice. There's a lot of moving parts there that people are just sort of getting peeved off about, and it's all sort of snowballed into this big thing with Windows recall. And yeah, it's not good. It isn't good. It's not a good look for Microsoft. It's not a good look for Windows. It's just quite evident that people don't like Windows. Like, people don't use Windows because they like it. People use Windows because they have to, and that is unique to Windows. I think people who use maybe Android as well to an extent, but I think there are a lot more loyal Android users than there are Windows users, and it's just the way things are in 2024.
So I was mentioning, Greg, about the heavy-handed tactic to try to get as many people to upgrade Windows 10, including ARM devices. He thinks that was evil and trickery all at once. See, I don't use words like evil or even trickery. I'll be honest. If you're a corporation, your job is making and selling software, I absolutely get the incentive, if it's your job and you're in charge of Windows, to figure out ways to get people to upgrade to your latest product. It's literally your job. Every company in the planet, including Apple, is right now thinking of ways to get you to go buy new things, subscribe new things, upgrade new things. Like, that is what they do. You may not like the practices or how it's done, but they're literally that's their mission and obligation to stockholders, is to maximize profit. You can sometimes take one for the team and be like, oh, we're not going to do that. But ultimately, your stockholders and your obligations to them is what matters. And so, that's why, Google kind of got rid of the don't be evil thing. They're like, oh, well, China's actually a really big market. We don't want to ignore them. When you're a private company, you have a lot more freedom to do these things and be a lot more moralistic. I would say anytime you talk about a public company that's traded, throwing morals into it is laughable at this point. Even the stuff that people make fun out of companies for being woke and all that. Like, one of the reasons why companies do the woke thing is because I don't know why people find this hard. It's like, let's take Bud Light, right? With the Dylan Mulvaney thing. Like, they probably looked at their demographics. Like, we sell a lot of beer to white guys in their 20s to early 40s. And they're like, we make money. So, but how do we grow that market? Well, we can start marketing to other people and other demographics. Like, the worst that happens is like, hey, we expanded our user base and we sell more beer, we make more money, I get a raise. Like, why would you go, no, 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 we're only selling to white males in their 20s to 40s because that's what Bud Light is, right? That's not your job, technically. Your job is to get as many people on the planet to buy your product. So, like, that's always going to be the driving factor of this stuff. So, I get we don't maybe not like it, but like, this is the system we all participate in. It's called capitalism. Like, that's how it works. You want morals, go to church. Like, if you want morals, don't talk about that in the economic system. Like, I don't feel like the woke stuff even that's going on is morals. I feel like that's just they can sell more products to a wider group of audience. Like, if you have a commercial that features black people, white people, brown people, Asians, and you're trying to advertise to all of them, it's because you want all of them to buy your product. If you just showed white people and black people and Asians aren't buying your product, like you're ignoring money. Like, why would you do that? I don't know. This stuff all is just financially motivated. So it's just like, I don't know. That's my rant there.
I'm just reading more comments on my editorial. Someone said, I usually rate Zach's work for Windows Central, but this article comes across as a long rant. Sorry, but it does. A lot of personal opinion. And I've just replied, well, it is an opinion piece. That's just crazy. People are insane. You shouldn't need to pass an intelligence test to go online. What is going on?
It says editorial.
Yeah, it's shocking, isn't it? It's absolutely insane.
Yeah, but editorials aren't long rant opinion pieces. No, actually, that's actually exactly what they are.
Oh, I'm going to go to bed. I'm so tired.
But you could entice people to upgrade by making new features that people want or need to have. They did.
Yeah, and also that doesn't work also.
Yeah. I mean, for one, they did. Now you could be like, I didn't see anything that I liked. Well, okay, that's fine. That's an anecdote, though. That's your personal, A lot of people do enjoy Windows 11 or do like the new design. So, like, it's just maybe not what you wanted. But as, Zach said, that doesn't also get people necessarily upgrade the OS, My iPhone gets pretty regular updates. I don't care about anything. Every new feature that they've introduced on iOS since maybe like iOS 14, I just don't know about. I don't care about. It just made it worse. I don't know. There's, but that's me. Obviously, other people clearly like it as market share has grown for the iPhone. So who am I, right?
So Dan, haven't you heard iOS 18 will allow you to move icons wherever you want on the home screen?
Oh my God. I guess that's good.
Yeah.
I mean, it's only taken how many years?
I know. Revolutionary though. It's game changing. Right.
It's funny to listen to Marquez Brownlee's podcast, which I forgot the name of it now, but they were all talking about Surface, and they're all pretty much Mac users, a lot of them because they're video editors, and so they, so it's not a surprise, right? A lot of that kind of tech media does use Mac, but they were very bullish on these new laptops. They thought they looked great. They're very excited. At least one or two of them said they prefer Windows 11 to Mac OS. Like, I don't know. For every person I see angry comments about like Microsoft who are actual Microsoft users, I see Apple people like, damn, those look really nice. And I don't know, Windows 11 is looking pretty good. So it's like, oh, who's right here? All I can tell you though is if you go look at Statista, market share for Mac OS dropped in the last couple of quarters and Windows went up.
Good.
So, yeah.
I
mentioned Linux. Yeah. I mentioned Linux, but LOL. Come on, who cares?
So yeah, I love Windows. Like, I prefer it over Mac. I like how it looks. I like how it functions. I do like Windows, but I appear to be in the minority these days, and that upsets me.
Last question: what's the most compelling feature that Windows has released, in your opinion? I don't know if I don't have one. I really like how they've paid attention to old school legacy apps like Microsoft Paint and Snipping Tool. I've said it many times. I use Snipping Tool, Microsoft Paint all the time, and they were cool. They were there, but there were years and years that they didn't get any updates. Maybe dark mode, right? That would be a thing. But they've actually added like new features to both of those that make them so much more useful. And it's cool to see Microsoft paying attention to a lot of its inbox apps to make them really good. Its new Photos app that's coming out with AI built into it is incredible. And it's also a very risky thing for them. We've always talked about this, that like we want really good inbox apps from Microsoft, but Microsoft also has to be careful not to do it so well that OEM partners who make software no longer have a reason to start to sell software to Windows users, right? If you made something as good as Adobe for editing photos or video, that was the built-in app on Windows. Like, why would Adobe continue selling software, right? So they got to find a fine line. But if you look at the new Photos app and the stuff it can do in terms of editing, I could name a few. Just Topaz Labs does really good AI photo and video apps, and I can tell you some of the features coming to that new Photos app with AI eats into their market. How well does it compare? I don't know, but Topaz Labs apps aren't cheap. They're like $100 each. So I think it's really cool that they're enhancing a lot of their existing apps with AI or bringing new features to them.
All right, I think it's time to head off.
Same here.
Cool. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We will be back, probably not next week, but we'll probably be back for the week of the Copilot Plus launch. So, yeah, stick around for that. But until then, we will see you next time. Bye-bye.